Welcome to SO 104, Study Session 5. Theory of Market Structures. Introduction. The term market structure states those characteristics of a market organization that affect the behavior and performance of firms. The number of sellers and the nature of the product are the most significant dimensions of any market structure. Furthermore, price determination and levels of output are very much affected by the nature and operations of the market. Here, we shall classify and discuss some types of market structures and analyze their effects on price and outputs. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Explain the following forms of market structures. A. Perfect market. B. Monopoly market. 2. Discuss market structures such as monopsony, duopoly, oligopoly, and duopsony. Perfect competition. A state of perfect competition exists when the market price of any commodity is established by forces beyond the control of the individual economic agent in the market, and it is as such a given and unalterable constant. This means that the market actors, that is, sellers and buyers for the commodities, are price takers. Perfect competition is thus theoretical, and every market is aspiring to achieve this. Characteristics of a perfect competition. There are many buyers and sellers, that is why everybody is a price taker, as nobody can single-handedly influence the price. 2. Commodities bought and sold are homogeneous, that is, one unit of any commodity is like another. There is no real or imagined difference. Thus, the product of one seller is identical to that of another, and this ensures that buyers are indifferent as to sellers from whom they purchase commodities. 3. There is free mobility of resources. There is complete openness in buying and selling of goods, that is, there is free movement of goods and services and resources in the market in response to market signals. 4. There is free entry and free exit, that is, any firm is free to enter the market and free to leave at will. Whenever the industry is earning excess profits, some new firms attracted can gain entry, but in case of lost, firms are free to leave. 5. There is perfect information and knowledge of market situation. This ensures that the same price obtains in the market. Buyers and sellers possess complete knowledge about the general asking price in the market. 6. There is no preferential treatment. Due to perfect information about the general asking price and the type of commodities sold in the market, every customer is treated in the same way. Thus, there is no question of exploiting one customer at the expense of another. 7. Absence of transport costs. There is no transport cost in carrying products from one place to another. This is an essential condition for the existence of perfect competition, where the same price obtains in the market. If transport cost is allowed and added to the cost price, there will be variation in prices within the market. Generally, all these characteristics sum up to mean the price taking attitude of the actors in the market. Because each firm's output constitutes a small part of the total supply, it is not able to effect any appreciable influence on the market price of the commodity through changes in its output price. Perfect competition market price. Now, since every unit of the commodity commands the same price or revenue on the average, AR, and at the margin MR, hence OP equals AR equals MR equals D. Profit maximization under perfect competition. Profit is defined as the difference between the total cost and the total revenue which results from a business operation. In the short run, profit is maximized at the output level where the difference between the total revenue and the total cost is largest. The highest profit of the firm will be earned when the vertical distance AB between the total revenue and the total cost curve is as large as possible. This in fact is the output D at which the slope of the two curves is the same, that is, where the tangents of the two curves are parallel. In perfect competition, whenever any of the characteristics or assumptions of perfect competition is violated, imperfect is the result. This is indicated by a downward sloping demand curve or an upward sloping supply curve facing the individual seller or buyer. Thus, when the firm in the industry is no longer a price taker, there is imperfection. Unlike in perfect competition, when the firm has only the output decision to make, an imperfect competitor has either the output decision to make or price decision to make at any point in time. There are many shades of imperfect competition. These are the following monopoly. These are the following: monopoly, oligopoly, monopsony, oligopsony, duopoly, etc. Pure monopoly. This is a market structure in which there is a single firm or producer selling a product for which there is no close substitute. Since the firm has no rival producers or sellers, it therefore constitutes the entire industry for the product, and the demand curve for the product is the market demand, which will slope downwards from the left to right. A pure monopolist has the veto to determine either 1. The price at which he sells his product, or 2. The quantity he wishes to sell. He cannot determine both price and quantity at the same time because he has no control over demand. Once he takes output decision, the price decision is left to be settled by the demand for the product. Similarly, if he chooses the price at which he will sell, the quantity of the product he can put on the market will be dictated by the demand. Price and output determination under monopoly. The goal of price and output determination is to know the levels of both that will enable the monopolist maximize his profit. To maximize profit in the short run, the monopolist must stick to the rules which require him to produce at the point where MR equals MC. The cost curves of the monopolist have the same U-shapes as those of the perfectly competitive producer, but there are differences in their marginal, average revenue and price or demand relations. While the three MR, AR, and D or P coincide in a perfect market, The marginal revenue differs, usually lower, from the average revenue and the demand curve, which is the same in a monopoly market. This is shown below. As shown above, the monopoly market is at a short-run equilibrium where the profit maximization rule, MC equals MR, dictates that the market can absorb 0Q level of output at a per unit price of OP equals QD, which is determined by the demand curve. At a lower output than 0Q, each addition increases the revenue more than the cost. MR greater than MC when output is greater than 0Q. Every additional unit produced adds less to the total revenue than to the cost. MC greater than MR. Therefore, the most profitable output is 0Q, at which per unit price is 0P. Total revenue is the shaded area PBCD. The monopolist has the ability to earn such excess profit for a long time because of the restrictions to entry. It can make abnormal profit. Causes of monopoly. 1. Sole access to natural resources. 2. Technologically induced monopoly. 3. Legal monopoly. Example, patient right. Types of monopoly. 1. Natural monopoly. This is related to the presence of natural resources. Nature places some minerals in a particular area. The resources which are not available somewhere else. Hence, such area has a monopoly of the supply of such minerals. 2. Government monopoly. The establishment of public corporations by the government of any state in the provision of some social amenities confers on it monopoly. Example, supply of power, PHCN, water boards, and until recently radio and television broadcasting. 3. Legal monopoly. This is in the form of patents, copyrights, and trademarks with the aim of promoting invention and the development of new ideas. 4. Technologically induced monopoly. An improvement in the technique of production can make a firm produce at a lower cost per unit. This empowers such firm to sell at lower prices than its rivals, thereby forcing its rivals out of business and assuming the position of the major producer of the goods concerned. 5. Merger. Voluntary of firms in form of trust. Cartel can cause monopoly. 6. High cost of establishment. The efficient scale of plant may be so large relative to the market such that there is only room for one firm. This is applicable to public utilities. For example, transport, water, electricity generation, telephones, etc. Control of monopoly. Monopoly power can be controlled through the following ways. 1. Encouragement of competitors by the government. This is by encouraging private investors to produce similar commodities. The provision of close substitutes reduces the power of a monopolist. 2. Nationalization of monopolistic enterprises. The takeover of such monopolistic firms by government will make the provision of such commodities to be at a lower price to the consumer, and this breaks the monopoly power. 3. Price control. This is in form of fixing maximum prices by the government so as to prevent the firms from charging higher prices from the consumers. 4. Enactment of laws making mergers illegal. Laws may be passed that can set up standards and even break up monopolies, with penalties attached to defaulters of such laws. 5. Provision of adequate information. The provision of adequate information about current prices and where goods are available could reduce the discriminating tendencies of the monopolist. 6. Taxation of the monopolist profit. The imposition of higher taxes on monopoly profits may curb the monopolistic tendencies of profiteering. 7. Formation of consumer cooperatives so as to enable consumers to produce goods and services at reasonable prices and break up the monopolistic power of single producers. Monopolistic competition. Perfect competition and pure monopoly are the limiting cases at each end of the scale of competition. But neither situation is found frequently in the real world. What is actually found is the combination of elements of both competition and monopoly. Ends. Monopolistic competition is a market structure characterized by numerous firms selling similar but differentiated products, with much effort devoted to forms of non-price competition such as product quality, packaging or wrapping, advertisement, etc. It is very similar to pure competition, except that the product is not homogeneous but differentiated. The fact that the product is differentiated between firms means that each does not face a perfectly elastic demand curve for its product, unlike perfect competition. Characteristics of monopolistic competition. 1. The objective is profit maximization. 2. The product is heterogeneous because of differentiation. The differentiation allows for different pricing. 3. There is a large number of buyers and sellers in the market. No single buyer or seller dominates the market in such a way as to affect the price or output level. 4. The firm determines either its output or its price. 5. The demand curve slopes downwards ends. The slope is negative. Nevertheless, demand tends to be elastic. Discrimination monopoly. A discrimination monopoly is one who can and does sell the same product at different prices to different customers. An example is a doctor who varies his fees for the same treatment according to his estimation of the wealth of his patient, or a car manufacturer who sells cars in export markets at a lower price than on the own market. The necessary conditions for discriminating monopoly are the following. There must be some imperfection in the market. These are in form of different markets or separation of markets by transport costs, consumers' ignorance or national barriers. Seller can exercise some control over each market or each part of the market separately. 2. Elasticities of demand in the market must be different. The demand curves for each market must slope differently. As a result, different prices will be charged by the monopolist in order to maximize his profits. 3. No seepage is possible between markets or different parts of the market. For instance, if an exporter in one country sells his goods much more cheaply in another country, then their transport costs or physical controls must prevent re-import to the country of origin. There are other forms of market structures. These are reflected in figure 5.4. There are other forms of market structures. 1. Monopsony. Here there is only a single buyer in the market, that is, buyer's monopoly. 2. Duopoly. This is a market with only two firms or sellers for the same goods or services. It is a special case of oligopoly. 3. Oligopoly. This is a market with a few firms producing differentiated products and where the action of one firm has a perceptible influence upon the other. 4. Duopsony. This is a market structure where we have only two buyers. It is a special case of oligopsony. Study session summary. In this chapter, we have discussed the meaning of perfect competition and its main features, profit maximization under perfect market, features of monopoly and monopolistic competition. We also examine the causes and the control of monopoly. Lastly, we mentioned some other market structures such as monopsony, duopoly, oligopoly, and duopsony. End of study session 5. Thank you for listening.